This speech-to-text app is created in Vanilla JavaScript without using any third-party libraries, and in this video you will learn how to build it from scratch in a simple way. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sohail, and without any further delay, let's jump straight into the tutorial. The setup is quite simple here. We have a bunch of files, empty JavaScript files, one style.css, one image which we will use as a background for our mic button, and then in index.html we have injected our style sheet and our main script file. We have also linked a font, Roboto, and here as you can see we have two script files. Now the idea is to put all the speech recognition logic inside this file so that we can make it as kind of like a library which can be injected and used in any application. Alright, let's start with writing the markup for our app. Let's write some CSS. Here on the mic button I have given an animation which is a good way to indicate that the button is ready to be clicked on. So if you look at the keyframes, at 0 and 100% the scale is 1, and at 50% we are increasing the scale a little bit. We are done with the HTML and CSS. Let's write some JavaScript. As we have discussed earlier, we will try to make this speech to text as a separate library which we can inject anywhere and use it. So I will create and export a class from speech to text which I will import here in our app.js, and here we will just consume this class. So I will import this class and then we will create an instance of it. We can also store it inside some variable. And now we already have our HTML ready. We want to design this speech to text in a way such that it accepts some inputs like the mic button selector, clear and copy buttons, the output element where it will render the final output, etc. So we will add a parameter options which will be an object, and here let's say we will pass the mic element selector so that it will take the selector, query the element and apply all the listeners, etc. which are needed. Similarly we have three more selectors, the clear button, the copy button and the output element. Alright, let's create this class now. So here first of all I will create and export a class speech to text. First we will add the properties which we need, like the mic button element where it will store the DOM element of this mic button. Similarly we have the other three elements, and then we need one property to store the state of listening. Now let's create a constructor which will accept options as a parameter which will be an object. Let's define a type of this. Although we cannot define types in JavaScript, that is possible only in TypeScript, but there is a workaround for it. If we add comments in this pattern, this will give you some sort of IntelliSense. So here we are declaring param, we are mentioning the param name, and here between these curly braces you will mention the type. So the type of this would be an object, so I will again put an object which has all these properties. This mic element selector which is a string, similarly other element selectors which are strings. So if you go in app.js and if you hover on this, it will tell you that it is a string. Alright. First we will write some null checks we will start with mic element selector. If there is no mic element selector passed, we will console this error and return. Similarly, we have to add null checks for all these elements. So instead of doing that, we will create a helper method which will handle the null checks. So I will comment this and we will create a method options null check and we will pass these options. Let's define this. So here first I am taking an array which is having all the properties which are needed or which are required. I will apply a filter on this array to check what all properties are not available in this options object. So this will give us an array which will contain all the properties which are not passed from the consumer. So we can check the length of it. If this array is not empty, then we will console the error, please provide the following selectors, and we will return true, which indicates there is some null check error. Otherwise we will return false. So here whenever it returns true, we will just console an error and return from here. Otherwise we will continue. So let's extract all the selectors from this options object. I'm using object destructuring here. And now we need to query these elements by given selector and then store those elements. We already have properties created for them. Let's start with mic element. I'm using document.query selector to query this and then storing the result in this mic button element. Similarly, we need for other 3 elements, and then we will set these listening state to false initially. Now that we have all our elements queried, let's apply some click listeners on them. So I'll create another method here, add event listeners. So this method will take care of applying listeners to all the elements which are needed. Let's start with our mic button. We are applying a click listener on this mic button element, and then we are passing this toggle listen as a callback method, which we will define in a moment. Similarly, we will apply listeners on the other elements like the clear button and the copy button. Let's start defining the methods. We'll start with toggle listen. So toggle listen, what this will do is it will just toggle the active status of our app. Whenever we click on this button, currently this is not in listening state. Once we click on it, it will start listening and generate the output. So we will depend on this is listening property which we have declared already. So whenever if is listening is true, this should actually stop the speech recognition process. So we will create one method stop recognition here. We will define this in a moment. Else we will start the recognition. Let's define these methods. So in start recognition, for now I will just set is listening to true, and in stop recognition I will just set it to false. As we progress with our app, we will add some stuff in these methods, and then we need a method for clear everything. We will actually define this method later, so I'll add a to do here. Same thing for the copy output. I will define this later. By the way, I'm using an extension to do tree which will highlight your to-dos, and also once you click here you can see all the to-dos in your app. This is a good way to remember things and come back to them later. Now let's work on the core part of our application, which is the speech recognition process. For that I'll create a method here and call it inside the constructor enable speech recognition. Let's define this method. The step 1 is to create an instance of the speech recognition class. We will store it inside this property. Let's declare this property. A quick note here, this speech recognition class is not directly available in some browsers including Chrome. You need to apply the WebKit prefix. So let's create a fallback for this. So if window.speech recognition is available, it will take this, or it will take WebKit speech recognition. Alright, the next step is to listen to the output. So whenever you are done speaking, it will generate an output or a text. So we will add a result listener on the speech recognition object. This event will be fired whenever a result is generated. Now we will actually need to extract the actual output from this event.results. So we will create a method to do that. Extract transcript. Let's define this method. So the actual output is available inside this path, and here let's output it in the console now. And now we need to actually start the recognition process. To do that, we will just simply say this.speechRecognition.start. Let's save our code and this should start working now. Hello testing. You can see it has generated one output, hello testing. And we've also logged this event.results, and if you expand this, you will find the result here. Here we don't want to start the recognition process right away. If you call it in this enable speech recognition, which is being called in the constructor, it will actually start the recognition process whenever you start your app. We don't want that. We want to start this recognition process only once we click on this mic button. So for that I will comment this over here, and we will put it inside our start recognition method. Now once we click on this mic button, only then it will start the recognition process. Alright, let's add one more animation on our mic button, which will convey that the mic is in listening state. So whenever we set is listening equals true, I will also set a class listening on our mic button. Let's write some styles for this. Alright, here we are creating a pseudo element and we are making it occupy the complete width and height. Also we are giving it background transparent and a border so that it looks like a ring, and we are centering it using this. Also we added one animation. Now we just need to apply this listening class on our mic button only when the application is in listening state. So I'll remove it from here and we will add it from our JavaScript. We actually don't need this as well. Alright. Now we are already maintaining a property is listening, and we are setting it to true and false whenever needed. So what we can actually do is create a getter and setter for this is listening, and whenever you set a value, we will also update the DOM. So first I will add an underscore here so that there is no conflict in the names, and I will define a getter with the name is listening. Now whenever you access this dot is listening, it will actually run this method and get the return value of this. So here we can return this is listening. Let's define a setter as well. This will have a parameter, the new value. So whenever you are setting any value to this dot is listening, it will call this setter method. And first of all, let's update this is listening. Now here, based on this value, I can add or remove the listening class from our mic button. So if the value is being set to true, we can add the listening class. So I'm taking this mic button element and adding listening to the class list. Else we can actually remove this class. Alright, when we click on this button, it will set the is listening to true. So it also adds this class. If I click on it again, it will set it back to false. The way the speech recognition API works is whenever the recognition is completed, it will actually end the process. So we need to start it again. For that, we can apply an event listener end, which will be triggered whenever the speech recognition process ends. And here I will pass a callback method. We will create this in a moment. And again we need to bind it with our this. Let's define this on recognition end method. Here what we can do is whenever the recognition ends and the application is in listening state, we will start the process again, so that the recognition ends only when we click on this button again. Alright, now let us display the output in our DOM, which is this output element. So here we need two elements. One is to store the actual output and the other element to show the active text as we speak. Let us query and store these elements in some properties. The active text element and the output text element. Let us declare these as well. Alright, now we will create another property which will store the active text. So again I will use the getter and setter concept. So in the setter function, after updating our private property, we will also update the DOM. So here we will just update the active text element. So now what we can do is, I will go into our result listener, and here the transcript can be added to the active text. I'll comment this and add the transcript to the active text. Doing this, it will update our active text property, which is here. Also, it will update the DOM element. Now this is for updating the active text. Now once the recognition ends, we need to put the active text inside the output element. So in the onRecognition end method, we can do that. So I'll call a method update output text. Let's define this. First of all, a simple null check. If there is no active text, return. And then we will create a span element, update its inner text with the active text, and then finally we can append this text element to our output element. And also we can empty the active text. So whenever the recognition ends, it will update the output text, and if the application is still in listening state, it will start the recognition again, which will do the same process again. Alright, let's test this. I will say some random words here for testing purposes. Alright, things are working now, but the only problem is there is a delay between when you are speaking and when it is actually rendering that. So that's because it takes some time to process the result, but we can make it look more natural by enabling something called as interim results. So on the speech recognition object, we can set interim results to true. So when we enable this, it will show the interim results. That means the results which are not yet final. So sometimes you might initially see something different, but after some time it will refine it and show the final result. Let us test this as well. So now this will look more natural because it is doing it kind of like a live speech to text. This is much better. Alright, let's define the clear and copy functionalities. So there we will be dealing with the output text. Let's define a property and store the output text there. Again, I will be using the getter and setter concept so that in the setter we can update the data structure as well as the DOM element. Now we have these methods. So let's define these. So in clear everything, we just need to set the active text and output text to empty strings. And for copy output, we can use the navigator API to copy text to the clipboard. So we can do navigator.clipboard.write text, and we will write this output text which we just defined. This will copy the output text, and then we can notify the user. So we will define this method where we will show this message copied to clipboard. This will take a message parameter. Here first I will create a div element and give it a class alert so that we can style it later. And I will add this message to the inner text, and I will append this element to the body. We also need to remove this after some time, so I will use a set timeout, and let's say after 3 seconds we will remove this element from the body. Now we don't have a direct way to remove any element, but we do have a remove child method available on any element. So what we can do is, on this element I will access the parent element and then do remove child on it, and again I will pass this same element. So this will remove the notification element after 3 seconds from the body. Also now we will use this output text in our update output text. So instead of doing all these things, we can just directly append this active text to our output text, and we can get rid of this. Alright, let's style this notification element. For that, in our index.html, I'll hardcode one alert element just so that we can style it. Let's save our files and let's write some styles. So here is our notification element. Let's style this. Let's define this animation, so which will make this notification appear from the bottom. Alright, this is looking much better now. We can get rid of this hard-coded alert, and let's test our application. Let me say something so that I can copy it and I will clear it later. Oh, it is adding this undefined. I think that's because here initially this output text would be undefined. So let us initialize it with empty string. Alright, let's test this again. If I click on copy, even after stopping this recording, it is still listening for some time. I think that's because we are just setting is listening to false when we stop recording. So it will not start the next process, but it will also not end the current process. So in the stop recognition, we need to stop this. Hopefully I get no bugs now. I'll click on the copy button. It says it is copied. Let us paste. Alright, it is working. Let us clear this. Awesome, this is also working. There is one last thing left in our styling part, which is the active text. Let us style the active text. So this will give us a good indication of what is active text and what is the output text. Let us again test this real quick. This is looking so cool. Wow. Well, that is it for this tutorial. I hope you will try to build this. Let me know in the comments if this tutorial was easy or hard to follow along. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comment section below. And don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends, and also subscribe for more such content. This is Sohail signing off. See you in the next one.
Please, Sarapakara, Sarapakara,